On March 29, 1989, in the bustling city of Tokyo, police were in the middle of a standard interrogation involving four young men aged between 16 and 18. The authorities were originally investigating the disappearance and illegal detainment of a 19-year-old boy. As the questioning progressed, the four suspects began to break down and provide statements, but a strange and chilling realization began to dawn on the investigators. The boys were admitting to horrific acts, but the details, the dates, the locations, and the specific nature of the mistreatment did not align with the case the police had on file. Recognizing the discrepancy, the officers separated the boys into different rooms to prevent them from coordinating their stories. Despite the isolation, their statements remained hauntingly consistent. It became clear that these teenagers were not talking about the 19-year-old boy at all. They were confessing to an entirely different, unrecorded incident that was far more sinister. They began to describe a young girl they had abducted and held captive for weeks. They admitted that, after she eventually passed away, they had placed her body inside a 55-gallon steel drum, filled it with wet concrete, and transported it to a construction site in the Wakasu area of Kodo, Tokyo, where they discarded it. Acting on this horrifying statement, the police rushed to the specified construction site. After a thorough search of the desolate grounds, they located the drum. When they cracked open the hardened concrete, they found the preserved remains of a young girl. The body was immediately sent for a detailed examination. The resulting medical report was so graphic and distressing that it sent shockwaves through the Japanese society and legal communities. The medical examiner determined that the cause of death was systemic shock and multiple organ failure resulting from prolonged, extreme physical trauma. The girl had been subjected to a level of mistreatment that defied human comprehension. The report noted that numerous small needles were found embedded within her sensitive tissues. Her lower body cavity contained foreign objects that had been forced inside her. Furthermore, the medical check revealed she was expecting a child at the time of her ordeal. Her face was so unrecognizable due to repeated blunt force trauma and chemical injuries that her family could only identify her through dental records. This discovery launched what would become known as the most disturbing 44 days in criminal history, the case of Junko Furuta. To understand how such a tragedy occurred, we must look back at the life of the victim. Junko Furuta was a 17-year-old student living in Misato, Saitama Prefecture. She lived a quiet, productive life with her parents and her younger brother. She was a third-year student at Yashio Minami High School and was known for being both academically bright and exceptionally kind. To save money for her upcoming graduation trip, she worked a part-time job at a local plastic molding factory. Her pleasant demeanor made her popular, but it also made her the target of unwanted attention from the school's troublemakers. Among these individuals was 18-year-old Hiroshi Miyanohara. Hiroshi was the leader of a small group of 4 boys who had dropped out of school but frequently returned to the campus to bully other students. This group, which included 17-year-old Joe Agura, 16-year-old Shinji Minato, and 17-year-old Yasushi Watanabe, had ties to local street gangs. Because of these connections, students and even some teachers lived in fear of them. Hiroshi developed an obsession with Junko and eventually approached her. Junko, knowing his reputation and wanting to focus on her studies and work, politely declined his advances. For a girl like Junko, it was a standard boundary. For a person like Hiroshi, it was an unforgivable insult to his ego. He began to harbor a deep, violent resentment toward her, waiting for the perfect moment to execute a plan of revenge. That moment came on the evening of November 25, 1988. Junko had just finished her shift at the molding factory and was cycling home. As she traveled down a familiar path, she was spotted by Hiroshi and Shinji Minato. Hiroshi devised a manipulative plan. He instructed Shinji to kick Junko's bicycle to knock her down, while Hiroshi would wait nearby and then rush to her side, pretending to be a helpful stranger who happened to be passing by. The plan worked. Shinji kicked the bike, and Junko tumbled to the ground. Hiroshi appeared immediately, offering his assistance. Since they had attended the same school, Junko recognized him and, in her shaken state, accepted his offer to walk her home. However, Hiroshi did not take her home. Instead, he led her to a park and then to a building in Adachi, Tokyo. Once they were isolated, the mask of the helpful classmate slipped. He threatened her, stating that he was a high-ranking member of a powerful gang. He told her that if she tried to run, scream, or disobey him, his associates would go to her house and harm her parents and brother. Terrified for her family's safety, Junko became paralyzed with fear and complied with his demands. That night, the first of many severe physical assaults occurred. Once Hiroshi's initial urges were satisfied, he didn't let her go. He called his 3 friends Joe, Shinji, and Yasashi to join him. They moved Junko to the house of Shinji Minato in Adachi. This location would become her prison for the next 44 days. Remarkably, Shinji's parents were often present in the house. While they knew a girl was being kept in their son's upstairs room against her will, they were so terrified of their own son and his violent street connections that they never intervened or called the authorities. They chose to ignore the muffled cries and the sound of violence coming from the second floor. During these 44 days, the level of depravity reached heights rarely seen in modern society. The boys used Junko to fulfill their every dark whim. When they grew bored, they invited over 100 other young men from their social circles to the house to participate in the harm. Junko was forced to call her parents on multiple occasions. Under the threat of a weapon, she told them that she had run away with a boyfriend, that she was safe, and that they should stop looking for her, believing their daughter had simply made a rebellious choice. The parents eventually withdrew the missing persons report they had filed. This was perhaps the most tragic turning point, as it cut off her last remaining lifeline. The details of her daily ordeal are harrowing. She was kept in a state of near starvation, fed only enough to keep her alive, so the mistreatment could continue. The boys forced her to endure dehumanizing acts and used her as a human punching bag to practice their fighting moves. They burned her skin with cigarettes and lighters and used molten wax on her. At one point, they used industrial tools to cause severe permanent injuries to her body. In mid-December, Junko managed to seize a moment of vulnerability and tried to use the household telephone to call for help. However, she was caught by the boys before the call could go through. The punishment for this attempt was catastrophic. The boys took heavy gym weights and dropped them repeatedly onto her legs and knees from a height, effectively shattering her bones. From that day on, she could no longer walk. If she needed to move, she was forced to crawl across the floor while the boys mocked and kicked her. As the weeks passed, Junko's physical state deteriorated to the point where she was barely recognizable. Her body was covered in open wounds that would not heal because of her weakened immune system. The air in the room became heavy with the smell of untreated injuries. Instead of feeling remorse, the boys became disgusted by her condition. They viewed her as an object that was spoiled, yet they continued to inflict pain. The end came on January 4th, 1989. Hiroshi Miyanohara had spent the day gambling and had lost a significant amount of money. Frustrated and angry, he returned to the house and decided to take his anger out on Junko. The 4 boys engaged in a final, hours-long assault, beating her with iron pipes and using lighter fluid to inflict burns. After hours of agony, Junko Furuta finally passed away at approximately 10 p.m. For Junko, death was likely the only release she had known in over a month. The boys, realizing they now had a body to hide, panicked. They bought a large drum and several bags of concrete. They placed her body into the container, poured the concrete over her, and allowed it to harden. They then dumped the drum at the Wakasu construction site, believing their secret was buried forever. It was only 2 months later, during an unrelated investigation, that their own arrogance and behavior led to their downfall. The legal aftermath of the case sparked national outrage in Japan. Because the perpetrators were minors at the time of the incident, they were shielded by the juvenile law. Despite the unprecedented nature of their actions, none of them received a life sentence. Hiroshi Miyanohara was sentenced to 20 years. Joe Aguirre received 10 years, Shinji Minato received 5 to 9 years, and Yasushi Watanabe received 5 to 7 years. Many felt that the justice system had failed Junko Furuta, valuing the rehabilitation of her attackers over the gravity of her suffering. The case of Junko Furuta remains a dark stain on human history, a reminder of how easily the thin veil of civilization can be torn away by cruelty and indifference. It highlights the importance of community vigilance and the devastating consequences of looking the other way when someone is in need.